Good afternoon. This is Sean Golding with Golding and Golding, here to discuss a little bit about how to protect yourself, whether you're a taxpayer or a tax professional, from a criminal investigation. Now, there is a lot of fear mongering online and scaremongering and making you think you need who knows what for what you might have done. But at the end of the day, most violations are civil, which means there's no criminal implication, there's no issue of potential indictment or incarceration or anything like that. This is just for those some situations where this could happen, right? With criminal investigations, there's been an uptick in enforcement on the international component. And this is all focused on international. At Golding and Golding, all we do is international, okay? So, whether it's FBAR, FACA related fraud or expatriation fraud, where taxpayers, artificially reduce the value of their assets to avoid being covered expatriates, or PRX 60, which is something the IRS really doesn't like, there has been an increase in enforcement. Again, most violations are going to be civil, but there has been an increase in criminal investigations. Sometimes the violations can lead to criminal investigation and lead to potential charges for things like tax fraud, which could be civil or criminal, tax evasion, money laundering, and structuring. So let's jump in and see how the IRS targets taxpayers and what they can do to protect themselves if a potential criminal investigation. So the first thing to consider is if you're under audit, right? Some taxpayers, they know they committed something that could be considered criminal, and then they get audited. And it's a civil audit, so there's no criminal implication during the civil audit. But these are considered eggshell audits and reverse eggshell audits depending on who has the information. And it's a bit of a dance that has to be done. But the taxpayer has to be very careful not to incriminate themselves. So if a taxpayer is under audit and the nucleus of facts involves something that may become criminal, taxpayer is going to want to consider having an attorney with them during that. Another issue is if the special agents contacted the taxpayer. Now, unfortunately, the special agents don't announce and tell you that they're going to be showing up so that you can prepare, right? They're going to find you when you're not ready. They're going to come in twos, probably wearing suits. They'll knock on your door when you're not prepared. They'll find you out to dinner when you're not prepared, at the health club when you're not prepared. So something to keep in mind is this. You don't want to be disrespectful. There's no need for that. But you're not required to speak with them. Typically what you would do is get their names, get their card, get their contact information, and then you would reach out to an attorney to assist you with communication so that, again, to protect you from incriminating yourself when possible. In recent years, like with the Malta pension plan, which the IRS was at least alleging potential civil and criminal violations, taxpayers may receive a summons. In any situation like that, the taxpayer should, of course, reach out to an attorney. One, to see if there's any way to quash it, and two, to communicate with the IRS or the Department of Justice if they find that they're at the receiving end of a criminal investigation. The IRS doesn't just target taxpayers, though. They can also target tax preparers. So what are tax preparers to do if they find themselves in this type of situation? So the first thing is be careful attending the audit with your client, right? It's, excuse me, it's human nature. Your client is audited. You know that there was some funny business going on. You know you helped facilitate it, and you want to be there to see what the IRS is asking. But the last thing you want is for the client to clam up or to get kind of cornered in the audit and then turn and say, well, it was my preparer here that told me I can do that. You're wanting to have that information could be setting yourself up for a bad scene. So if you're a tax preparer and you helped facilitate the fraud or other potential criminal violation, you probably don't want to appear at the audit. If you're a preparer and you're under OPR investigation, before responding, you should, of course, reach out to an attorney to assist you with the response to make sure you can help protect yourself, your business, your livelihood, and your reputation. Did your client already speak with the IRS Department of Justice? This is very important. So if you're a tax preparer and you know that your client has already spoken with the IRS Department of Justice, you have to be cautious in communicating. Of course, you're going to want to communicate. You're going to find out what they said. You want to find out what the IRS or the government said. But here's the thing. You don't know if your client is wired. You don't know if your client has entered into a cooperation agreement. If they have, chances are they're not going to tell you. So you want to be careful any communications you have with your client, especially after they may have communicated with the IRS or Department of Justice. If you're out of compliance and you're willful, then the option available to you is typically the voluntary disclosure program. You know, the program's gotten tougher in the past few years. The penalty's gone up. It's much different than the streamlined procedures or delinquency procedures, which is for non-willful people. But if you're willful and you try to go into one of those type of procedures, you can get in some serious trouble. There were a couple cases where CPAs were criminally indicted. So if you're out of compliance and you want to get into compliance and you want information, you know, we have a ton of free information available on our main website and our sub websites. You know, you can always reach out and schedule a reduced fee initial consultation if it's appropriate to your matter, and it's something that we handle here. Again, my name is Sean Golding with Golding & Golding. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.